Thank you, Earl, and I'm Tom Sneed. Thank you so much for being with us today on a special program, Getting to Know You, that we started last week. Getting to Know You. Our guest today is Dr. Buddy Nichols and his wife, Dolores Berry. Thank you, folks, for coming back, being with us here on part 2 today. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Tom.
You two have written a book together.
Yes.
You've been married about 2 years now. On last week, we learned about you, Dolores, at the age of 9. You had a lot of health issues, stomach problems.
That's correct.
You went to the doctor, and the doctor, after a lot of tests, found out that the gluten or wheat was the culprit in this, and he told you, stop eating.
Stop eating wheat.
Start eating wheat. Okay, do you remember what you started eating? I mean, what do you eat if you can't eat wheat?
Well, I
What
think
can you eat?
I remember in the, being 9, you're not thinking like an adult yet, but I remember in the grocery stores reading labels, reading more and more and more labels, and it seemed like it took forever as a 9-year-old to get out of the grocery store. So
No more bread.
no more bread.
bread like that.
No more pasta.
No more pasta. No,
No
more
macaroni and
Little
cheese.
Debbie's.
No
Twinkies.
No cookies.
No cookies.
Cakes and pies and
I don't-
gravies and
I don't know about a 9-year-old little girl, but for a 66-year-old man, it's killing me.
well,
It's
the
killing-
worst was the pizza and the chocolate chip cookies. Those
Oh,
two I
yeah.
really missed.
If I can't
as a
have
kid.
that, what can I have? Let me say that my wife and I, Cindy and I, we're in about 2 months now of trying to go gluten-free and learning all of this because we feel like my wife has the celiac disease, and we're trying to stay off of that. And then we were so excited when we found out that you two have written this book called The Gluten
Conspiracy.
There we go. I'm still having problems with that. We'll get it down here. You came up with the title of the book, Dolores?
Well, Leldon did all this research for about 4 years on what gluten was, why we shouldn't eat it, why it wasn't good for anyone to eat. And the evidence was quite staggering that it's not just for those people that have a sensitivity or celiac disease, that it's truly not good for anyone, and all the reasons why. So that when you begin to see where it is, and a part of the conspiracy to me is where it's lurking in all of our foods. That it truly, when you begin to read these labels that I was talking about, they put wheat in just most everything. You pick up most cans, boxes, bags, however food is packaged in a grocery store, and you'll find it contains wheat or gluten.
Or the gluten. Now, in the program last week, we found out exactly what is gluten. And, Buddy, if you'll go back over that again for us, let me ask you the question again. What is gluten?
Well, the word itself comes from the word glue, so it gives you an idea that
Okay.
that quality of the wheat, when you mix it together, and then you put water with it, it becomes doughy, and you can begin to see. As a matter of fact, many people remember when you were in elementary school, you learned how to make glue with flour. Just flour.
That's right, yeah.
But interesting, too, the teacher always told you, do not eat it, do not eat it.
It's bad for you.
We're going to make glue out of it, but don't eat it.
Yeah.
Of course, it hadn't been put, it hadn't been cooked and that sort of thing, and it was understandable. But it's really not good for you cooked or raw. But it comes from the word glue, and that describes the quality of what happens when you make your breads. It kind of puffs it up because it traps those air pockets in there when it's cooking. They call it gluten.
Yeah.
But it's one of the proteins that we've identified in the book that's being kind of antisocial. We call it an anti-nutrient. Really, it doesn't sit very well with the human ingestion.
Now, the gluten was something that was put in years ago in the wheat.
No, actually, it's always been in wheat.
Really?
Oh, yes. Gluten was put in there, I think, by God, the Creator, to provide for the grain itself.
Okay.
And we talk about the beauty of nature in the book, and we talk about respecting the beauty of nature. And I think that's kind of where we are with this whole discussion, that we actually have a kind of a clash of two natures. Our nature God's given us an immune system that tells us when we're eating something or something's in our body that shouldn't be there, and it responds to that. Well, the nature of wheat is such that it wants to live too, and it has protectors in it that will be kind of like pest control. If something biological or an animal or humans would eat it, it would make them sick, because it's part of the natural defense of the wheat. If you look at wheat when it's growing, it's pretty vulnerable. It's out there in the open. It doesn't. That little wheat kernel is very vulnerable to being eaten, and so I think part of this is the way it was naturally intended by God to sustain wheat and let it grow and let it reproduce itself. So these various proteins that are offensive to humans when we eat it are actually there for the survival of the wheat, and it's just a natural thing.
And not necessarily for humans.
That's exactly right. It's just a clash of two natures. One they both want to survive, and so we've kind of gotten away from understanding how to observe that. Of course, some things have happened, and we talk about what happened in the last 50 years with wheat that makes it particularly more difficult for humans today. And Dolores has already hit on one of those things, and we have found ways to put wheat in everything, in all kinds of products, not just bread products. It would kind of be easier if the wheat gluten were just in bread products.
Right.
But it's in so many things as an emulsifier, as an additive to actually want to make you eat more of it, because it has that quality in it. And we have not written a lot about that in our book, but that has been documented in other books, like Dr. William Davis's book called Wheat Belly. He talks about that wheat actually has an opiate kind of reaction to humans. It makes you want to eat more. So you become literally addictive to anything that potentially has wheat in it. It's an appetite stimulator. And you say, that was good, I'm going to do that again. Well, part of that could be what's going on in your brain when you eat things with the wheat gluten in it.
That's why I feel like with cakes and pies and all like that.
Very addictive, isn't it?
Yeah, very addictive.
Yeah, we say,
pizza.
Yeah, and we say, we like all those products. We like them. We like to eat them. But the wheat does not like us. And so there begins to unfold the concept of the conspiracy. And not give anything away that's in the book, but we talk about the wheat mafia and the family of proteins and that sort of thing. So gluten would be one of those that we've identified in the book. It's one of the proteins that's anti-nutrient, and it's not very social, and it's antisocial. We call it toxicity in the book. We're familiar with the concept of certain people being toxic when you mix them in a social context.
Right.
They don't mix well. And you just kind of decide, I'm just going to leave that person alone. We do better when we're not together, so to speak. Well, that's where we are with foods. There's certain toxic foods that just don't mix well.
And of course there's a lot of foods that has the allergic reaction too.
Of course.
Like peanuts. The peanuts is a big culprit on that one.
And that's part of our education challenge in the book, Tom, is that we believe that as people understand more about the wheat, gluten, and the allergic reaction, as you said, we've identified 3 groups that are particularly vulnerable. One would be the celiac disease. And as a classification, as a clinical group, those people represent about 1% of the world population. About 1 out of every 100 people could be diagnosed as celiac. Now, most people who have it have not been diagnosed. And it generally takes several years, up to 9 to 10 years, to diagnose it, which means that, as the doctors are working with their patients and they're complaining about multiple things, they don't always quickly go to the source and the problem. And particularly with gluten, as Dolores has stated, she was sick all of her life and wasn't diagnosed till she was 9. And that's right on schedule with where we are today. People can suffer with this for a long time until they are diagnosed and say, you need to need to leave off the gluten. So that group would be the celiac disease
1%.
group. That's 1%.
Okay.
Then you have 4 to 6% of those that would have wheat allergies. The wheat allergy, that's another classification. Another set of symptoms you would have. You'd have the anaphylactic shock type symptoms. It could be that severe, and it may just be mild, like rash. That worldwide tends to be between 4 and 6%. And that's the reason you'll find wheat as one of the main allergens, and that's why it has to be listed in products made in America on the ingredients list, because there are 8 main allergens, and wheat's one of those. And we're fortunate that it's that way, because with the celiac disease, only 1%, it may not be there as far as a label, but it is there because it's an allergen. And then the rest of us, we're in a spectrum called gluten sensitivity. We're either apparently tolerant to gluten or we're not tolerant, and the symptoms are across the board as well. I mean, they're not always the same symptoms as either those who have allergies or those who have the celiac disease, and it's very problematic to be able to pinpoint it. But in general, as you look across the scope of all of these 3 groups, the celiac, the wheat allergy, and the gluten sensitivity group, it's still the best advice that we could give is just leave it alone. Just don't consume it, because it probably is not healthy for you.
So gluten is going to be affecting all of us.
Yes,
all of
yes,
us.
Exactly. And we cite a report that came out just a little over a year ago. The world's leading researchers on this subject came together in London to develop what they called a nomenclature, or the kind of the protocol for understanding the conditions that we've talked about. They call it a consensus report. And that becomes the foundation on which the rest of the medical community then will begin to build their protocol for diagnosing and treating and so on. And in that report, Tom, they say that every human is susceptible to some kind of wheat-related or gluten-related reaction at some point during their life. Every human. And that's a big statement. That was a big statement coming out of that research, and it's in our book. We've documented it. You can go read it online and see it word for word. And these are some, like I said, we had representatives from America, from Harvard, and from Columbia University, Peter Green from Columbia, and Fasanio from Harvard. We're on that team of these people from around the world that came up with that consensus statement. So this is rock solid science. This is not voodoo. This is not a myth, and it's not a fad. People say, well, just being gluten-free is a fad. No, it's going to become more and more of the right thing to do, to leave it off, and then enjoy the unexpected benefits, we call it. If people say, why should I try a gluten-free lifestyle? And I say, well, the unexpected benefits. It'll go gluten-free, listen to your body, and you're going to have some great benefits. And that's what happened to me. When I started dating Dolores, I wouldn't eat the gluten or eat the bread because she couldn't eat it when we would go to a restaurant. So I started leaving it off, and then before long I was losing weight. And in 9 months I lost 65 pounds.
My.
Just not eating the things she couldn't eat, and all she was leaving off was gluten. Many, many people give that same report that we've talked to.
That is great. We're talking with Dr. Buddy Nichols and his wife, Dolores Berry, and they've written the book called The Gluten Conspiracy. I got it right on that. Dolores, you were diagnosed at age 9. When you come back, what did your mom do? What foods? Did the doctor tell you some foods, or did your mom pick up on it? Or give us some kind of ideas of what you were eating at that young age.
Well, I don't know. As a 9-year-old, you don't remember a lot about it, other than she made sure I didn't. I gave up bread. I didn't eat any of those normal things that we think of. Ate a lot of fruits and vegetables and plain meat. No more fried chicken. Let's see. Just
the question that a lot of people have: well, if I cannot have the pizza and the breads and the sweets and all like that, what can I eat? But there's really a lot of things that you can eat, like the fruits and the vegetables.
And meats and fish and cheese and dairy doesn't have wheat. So basically anything that you think of that goes into that bread category. But since then, now, as Leldon was saying, they they hide the wheat in so many packaged foods that it's not as clear cut as it was when I was a child.
I'm spending most of my time reading the labels
Yes,
in the grocery store.
but now the
Everything I
flip
pick
side-
up and look, and
Yes.
and
It's
thankfully, thankfully, a lot of the manufacturers are putting on, if it's gluten free, they'll put on it gluten free, or that GF on
That's right.
on that package. But they'll also put caution contains wheat.
processed on machinery.
Right. That is something that you really have to look for. Are there places in town that you can buy the gluten-free products?
We've found many, and in fact, we're seeing more and more of it. Even in the regular grocery stores, if you ask or you look, they've probably got a section that's gluten-free items, or they have them labeled in each aisle as such. Earth Fare, Whole Foods, Publix, Bilo. You go to the Village Market in Collegedale, they've got many to choose from.
And we'd mentioned
And Mimi's
Mimi's up in the Hickson area.
an
Hickson
impressive place for finding gluten-free products. Probably the best selection anywhere we've been.
Now, your book is brand new, just out. Give us an idea, buddy, how it's divided up in the book itself.
Yes, Tom, the book has two parts. In section 1, we call it Exposing the Situation. In section 2, it's Providing the Solution. So the title, Gluten Conspiracy, Part 1, Exposing the Situation, we start out by telling our story. Dolores tells her story in detail from when she was first diagnosed at the age of 9, and then when she was in college, and then on through her years, even going to Europe. I think she says she learned to say, what was it you learned?
I'm allergic to wheat in 4 or 5 languages very quickly.
So
That had to be a challenge
It was a big challenge.
over there. Yeah.
But that's in the book, and then I tell my story of personal encounter and why I'm so passionate about this message that we're getting out. It's also in there. It's a little more personal. I'll talk about that now, but we tell that. So the situation of ourselves, and then the situation involving culture. You see, we have a cultural phenomenon that's created this problem. It was the converging of several things. It goes back to 50s and 60s. Because in 1964, a wonderful scientist named Norman Borlaug developed a different kind of wheat because India was starving because of the drought. Mexico, their wheat was failing because of drought. So Dr. Borlaug goes down, and with the help of other scientists, he works together and comes up in 1964, introduced a new variety of wheat that we'd never seen before, and it was drought resistant, pest resistant. It yielded more wheat per acre than any wheat we'd ever seen. It was wonderful. Dr. Norman received a Nobel Peace Prize for that wheat. And we document that in the book, and we talk about it. The problem was, in order for him to put that together, and he did the standard breeding techniques. This is not GMO wheat. It's standard crossbreeding that he was doing that had been done for many years prior. One of the questions we get often is, wait a minute, time out. If wheat is bad for us, what about the Bible? Jesus is called the bread of life. He broke bread with his disciples. What's the problem here? Well, this is the problem we're talking about. The earliest types of wheat go back to Egyptian days when they began to pick up the seeds that the cows were eating, out in the field, and made some bread with it of some type, and then later on it became the bread of the Bible. And through on the 2,000 years of crossbreeding and different ways in which it's prepared. We prepare wheat differently, differently now. As a matter of fact, it became known in the 50s and 60s as fast bread, which meant that the way we prepare it is different than the way it had been prepared, even by my grandmother and great-grandmother. But what we're saying is that the proteins in this new wheat that Dr. Borlaug came up with were kind of supersized, or at least they were enhanced. The proteins that actually benefited the growth of the wheat itself, made it pest resistant, more durable for drought conditions. He had to beef up the protein in the wheat itself in order for it to provide for the...
Make it healthy.
Exactly. Well, it's the protein then, the super duper protein, that we found out 50 years later now, that's really doing us in.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. But that's the same wheat, the preferred wheat around the world today is this new dwarfed wheat that was introduced in 1964. But if you go back to the 50s and 60s, other things were happening. We had a technological revolution underway. And by the way, Dr. Norberg, with his new wheat, started what's called the green revolution. That's something that people have read about. Then we had the technological revolution because we had something called Sputnik. And then we all know what happened after that with the more technology and the advent of computers. Then we also had a culture revolution from the agrarian culture to what we call in our book the acquisition culture. About me. I want it now, I want it fast, and I want it cheap.
Instant grits.
Instant. I want it now. I want it boxed. I want it convenient.
Yeah.
And then you had all the explosion of
Don't
the
have time
fast
to
food
wait.
stores. The McDonald's syndrome you see around the world and all that. Well, all of that converged at the same time. You look at the time period between 50s and 60s. That's where it happened, and that's a cultural
happened
thing.
in our generation.
Yeah, our generation.
Our
Now,
generation.
that's what we're saying. It's an educational problem. It's an educational challenge. Okay, so we tried something for 50 years. It didn't work. We need to be smart enough to say time out. We've done something because we have more cancer now. We have 400% increase in all these various diseases. And a lot of it can be traced to what we eat and the drinking and the air and things like that. We've done a very good job on cleaning up air and cleaning up most of the water, especially in America. There are still places in the world where they do not enjoy those. But we need to be thinking more about the diet.
Yeah.
And we don't actually call it a diet. We call it a lifestyle. We call it a gluten-free lifestyle. It does involve all of us in the various foods. I do want to mention this in case I forget. We have a website, and if people listening to this program would like to go to our website, it's called glutenconspiracy.com. Glutenconspiracy.com is our website. And on the website, you can look at the book. You can see samples of the book. Section 2 of the book. Now, Section 1, exposing the situation, we talk about
a little bit of history.
It's all the history. We call it the perspective. It establishes our perspective on the wheat issue. It tells the story. It tells our story and tells a story of culture. It tells a story of so many things. The FDA, the role of government, and that kind of thing. It's all in the first 50 pages. The second section is primarily Dolores' wonderful recipes. And she has
I was hoping you'd get to those because I've opened to page 75, quick potato soup, and boy, it looks good. Dolores, tell me about this quick potato soup.
Well, it's something that's tasty. You can do it in a hurry if we're talking about wanting it now. My philosophy is if I can't get it in 20 minutes, I'm not going to bother with a recipe. It better be fast because when I have time to cook, it's after a long day of work, it's just got to come quickly. So most of the recipes are something you can do quickly. They're written in a fashion that are easy to read. There's not... if you see a recipe and it says step 1, 2, all the way to 10 steps, no, I'm not going to look at that recipe. It better be something I can read once and fix it. And there's no inspiration for me without a photo. So every recipe has a photo. So you know what you're going to get at the end.
Did you take those pictures?
We took those. Yes, we did.
Those are great pictures.
Thank you.
Oh, this potato soup, I'm wanting to spoon right now and just get it right out. A potato cheddar soup, pumpkin soup. You've got a lot of soup. Oh, look at the salads on this. Almond chicken salad. Oh, I tell you, I'm getting ooh. Now, again, you have to watch what you put in. Make sure that the ingredients does not have the gluten in it.
That's right.
So that's why you've got to do your shopping. Now, if you cannot use the wheat flour, what do you use? Like if you're going to make a cake or a pie or something like that.
Well, there are many flours out there, and we all believe that wheat flour is the only option. But like at the village market, you probably can walk in there and find 30 different types of flour that are an alternative to wheat. In our book, we have a page that gives you a formula for how to mix these different flours in different combinations that will give you the same result for a wheat flour. And then you can take any recipe that you already have on your shelf that's your favorite that calls for wheat flour, use our little formula for how to to change it to that. It's equal portions, so it's not hard, and you'll come out with a wonderful result. At least with all of our tries on any recipe that called for wheat flour, we've not had one that didn't work. So we'll pretty much stand by our formula that it's simple and it's not rocket science.
I can see this from the book.
Anyone can do this, and it doesn't have to be hard to live without gluten.
Yeah.
And that's really what we were professing here in this book, that you can do it and you'll live better and you'll be much happier with what you eat. Your body will feel good, and you might lose some weight, and your aches and pains might go away.
That
and you
I
might
need.
think clearer, and there's a huge list of symptoms and disorders that are all connected to eating gluten, and how this could help most anybody feel better, not just those that have a very big reaction to it.
It's called Gluten Conspiracy, written by Dr. Buddy Nichols and Dolores Berry. It's available. You can get it online.
Yes, you can. Through our website, glutenconspiracy.com.
Okay.
You can buy it through Amazon. And also on our website, glutenconspiracy.com, you can get a digital or an ebook version of it through Google Play.
Okay.
And so the options are there.
Oh, it's available. And let me tell you, I have a copy of it by hand. Beautiful pictures, great recipes, fish in the foil, southern fried catfish. Oh, it's time for lunch, folks. It is time for lunch. Get a copy of the book. Go on the lifestyle of the gluten-free. I think that you'll really see a difference in your life. And for more questions, if folks have questions, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
They go to our website, glutenconspiracy.com, and we have our contact information there. Again, they can see a video. They can see Dolores' video talking about her journey. I have a little video clip in there giving my journey. They can see, again, samples of the book. They can see these beautiful pictures you're talking about.
And you can submit a question.
And they can submit questions that we say
Good.
contact us. And also we invite people to tell their story. We ask them to tell your wheat-free story because we're trying to collect the data. Another part of what we're talking about is our research project, and it's explained in the book. So people who have good reports or people who have any report, just go to our website, tell your story, send that to us. We will be in touch with you through the emails.
And the address again is?
glutenconspiracy.com.
Now, I have two questions I want to ask. Number one, all of these recipes are good. They look great. That's in a controlled environment at home. But what if my wife and I, we want to go out to a restaurant? What do we do? Can we trust that restaurant?
No, you cannot trust the restaurant.
All right.
There are some that understand it, and those are the ones that you can stick by pretty faithfully. But in the book, there's a page that kind of gives you the scenario of what you're going to want to ask, who you talk to, how to go about it. If you don't feel like you have an advocate in your server to go to the kitchen and get the needed information and make sure that you're going to be safe. In the end, it's best to just say, thank you very much, but I don't feel right about this. We'll have to go. And just don't be shy about getting up and walking out, because in the end, it's your health, it's your well-being at stake, and to worry about offending a restaurant should not be on the top of your list. It should be you.
Okay.
And I've learned that myself.
Good advice. Good advice.
But that page will be very helpful to anyone who's trying to figure out how to go out and eat and not get sick.
And it's in the book.
It's in the book.
Now, my second question. My wife has migraine headaches, had them for about 35 years. Is there any correlation with the gluten and celiac and migraine headaches?
Yes, and Leldon has documented that through all of his research, that there are many, many problems, health problems, that are directly connected to the intake of gluten.
Yes.
And it's staggering, actually. And there's just a page of some of those that we've listed in the book. And that can connect to almost any kind of ailment you might have, from Alzheimer's and autism, diabetes, obesity, skin disorders, nerve problems, joint problems, headaches. Boy, that's just a few. But it's really just shocking.
Yeah.
A celiac disease, Tom, as a clinical classification, is an autoimmune disorder. And it's the only out of 80 plus autoimmune diseases that we know about, it's the only one that we know exactly what the culprit is, and that's gluten. Gluten causes celiac disease. The other autoimmunes, we have combination of things that create those. But this is just the foundation for the other kinds of symptoms that are in people who are not celiac disease. And we talk about those three classifications: celiac disease, wheat allergy, and then gluten-sensitive people. So we don't claim that, say, for example, migraine headaches, that it is the only stimulator of that condition. It could be one in a chain of things that's taking place. We give in the book 5 different theories as to how gluten might be involved in causing symptoms of non-celiac disease or wheat allergy type reactions. So I think that would be helpful, folks, that it would say, well, how can I understand how this wheat is related to my aches and pains or my problems or my difficulties? And as Dolores said, there are just so many kinds of things. Our advice is go gluten-free and then enjoy the unexpected benefits, because there are going to be many. Listen to your body. Your body's going to tell you if this is the right thing for you to do.
Small price for the book with a great outcome in your health.
We think so.
And they can get a copy of the book by going to your website. Give us that address.
It's glutenconspiracy.com. You'll be able to see the book there. You can order it right off of the website. You can contact us there, send us emails, ask your questions. We'll get back to you. You know, so see our stories there.
And we should have a couple of gluten awareness groups that will be starting up here in a few months. And on the website, you'll be able to see where those will be held. We've got a demand for that.
Do you have a sign-up place or a newsletter on your website?
We'll have that, yes. On our website, we'll be giving the current events and the schedules for gluten support groups, awareness classes, as Dolores just said. So, just keep checking in at our website, glutenconspiracy.com, and we'll have all the information there.
Dolores, thank you so much for being with us today.
Our pleasure.
And Buddy, good to see you again.
Thank you, Tom.
I think you've hit on a great book. And, of course, the gluten-free lifestyle, it's going to be great. Thank you so much for being with us today on